The Thames Chase. Setting, England, 1852. The foggy streets of London are alive with the bustle of horse-drawn carriages, steam engines, and gaslit lamps. The story revolves around the narrow alleys near the Thames River, where cobblestones are slick with rain, and shadows stretch long into the night. Characters: Edward Blackwood, a 32-year-old former British Army captain turned detective. Sharp-eyed, clever, and relentless, he has a deep sense of justice. Margaret Maggie Whittaker, a 28-year-old street-smart pickpocket who knows every nook and cranny of London. She has a soft spot for Edward, having worked with him before. Inspector Reginald Carver, a stern and ambitious inspector from Scotland Yard. He dislikes Edward's rogue methods but is forced to work with him. Thomas Finch, a ruthless crime lord, controlling the opium trade along the docks. He is cunning, violent, and determined to escape justice. The discovery. The story opens with Edward Blackwood receiving a tip-off from Maggie Whittaker about a planned opium shipment at the Thames docks. Edward knows this is the break he needs to take down Thomas Finch, the most notorious crime lord in London. Maggie insists she joins him. She knows Finch's men, and her quick reflexes might come in handy. Reluctantly, Edward agrees, knowing Maggie can handle herself. They meet with Inspector Reginald Carver, who is less than pleased to see Edward and Maggie working together. Carver has little patience for Edward's unorthodox methods but acknowledges his effectiveness. With Carver's men providing backup, they set off for the docks. The ambush. Under cover of night, they approach the docks. The Thames is cloaked in a thick fog, making visibility poor. They split up. Edward and Maggie move along the northern side of the docks, while Carver and his men take the southern side. As they creep closer, they hear low voices and the sound of crates being moved. They spot Finch's men, 10 of them, armed and unloading the opium crates from a small cargo ship onto a waiting carriage. Edward signals to Maggie to stay low. As they observe, a man in a dark overcoat steps forward at Thomas Finch himself. Suddenly, a noise echoes from Carver's side, a boot scraping against a barrel. Finch's men are immediately on alert. Finch yells, "It's a trap! Get the goods and scatter!" Gunshots break out as Finch's men open fire on Carver's group. Chaos erupts as smoke from pistols mixes with the fog. Edward and Maggie spring into action. Edward charges forward, drawing his revolver, firing at the henchman. Maggie, agile and swift, darts through the maze of crates, taking down a thug with a well-aimed blow to the head using a discarded plank. She grabs a fallen pistol and covers Edward. The chase. Realizing the ambush isn't going as planned, Finch makes a break for it, sprinting down a narrow alley leading away from the docks. Edward spots him and shouts to Maggie, "Go after him. I'll hold them off." Maggie doesn't hesitate. She dashes after Finch, who pushes through a crowded street market, knocking over fruit stalls and causing panic among the vendors. Maggie follows, leaping over fallen carts and weaving through the crowd with the agility of a cat. She manages to keep Finch in sight, but he is fast and ruthless, shoving anyone in his way. Meanwhile, back at the docks, Edward is locked in a fierce gunfight with Finch's men. He takes cover behind a stack of barrels, picking them off one by one. Carver's men provide some support, but they are outnumbered. Edward knows he must end this quickly and decides to draw their fire. He runs across an open stretch, luring them into the open where Carver's men can take them down. The gamble works. Finch's men are exposed and fall one by one. Confrontation. Maggie catches up to Finch near a crumbling brick warehouse. Finch, realizing he can't outrun her, decides to make his stand. He draws a knife, his eyes wild and desperate. "Stay back, girl, or I'll gut you like a fish," he snarls. Maggie, panting but defiant, pulls out her pistol. "You've got nowhere left to run, Finch. Surrender, and maybe they won't hang you." Finch lunges at her. Maggie fires, but the shot goes wide. They grapple, the knife flashing in the dim light. Maggie uses her street fighting skills, dodging his thrusts and landing a few good blows. But Finch is stronger and manages to pin her against the wall, knife at her throat. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out. Finch's grip loosens, and he stumbles back, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his fingers. Edward stands at the entrance, smoke trailing from his revolver. The capture. Edward moves in, keeping his gun trained on Finch. "It's over, Finch. Give up." Desperate, Finch makes a last-ditch attempt to attack, but Maggie swiftly kicks his legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. Edward rushes forward, cuffs him, and hauls him to his feet. Carver arrives, his coat torn and his face bruised. He looks at Finch with disdain and turns to Edward. "I suppose I have to thank you for this, Blackwood. Even if you did make a mess of things." Edward smirks. "Just doing what you couldn't, Carver." Maggie chuckles, "You two are like an old married couple." With Finch in custody and his men either dead or captured, the opium ring is broken. As the dawn breaks over London, Edward and Maggie stand at the edge of the Thames, watching the sun rise through the dissipating fog. A new beginning. Carver begrudgingly admits Edward and Maggie did well, and he offers Edward a formal position with Scotland Yard. Edward declines. "I prefer my freedom," he says, glancing at Maggie. She grins, knowing they'll continue to work together, solving cases in their own way. They walk off into the waking city, ready for whatever adventure comes next.